Hey up and Happy New Year. Welcome to episode S of the Temple of Bleh podcast. This one's a little bit of an interesting left field one for the history of Roadrunner Records. It's a chat with Mike Gitter, who is currently Vice President of A&R at Century Media Records, but also had a stint at Roadrunner Records between 1997 and 2009. In this particular episode, we talk about Dragonforce's Inhuman Rampage in celebration of the 15th birthday of that record. As is typical of the guests of this podcast, Mike was incredibly accommodating, articulate, and engaging, and it was a real pleasure talking to him about one of my favourite bands, and especially a band that came into my life at a rather formative time. So let's just jump straight into it. 1, 2, fuck shit up.
What's up?
There we go.
I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me. I can hear you this time. Hold up.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
Boom.
Cool. I think
Boom.
I assume it's because Zoom updated on me, and then I had the update installed, but I kept the window open. So I think it was something like that.
Yeah, okay, because I got hit with that. I got hit with that same update today as well.
Right, cool.
So totally understand. How are you?
Dude, I'm good. I'm just hitting the coffee, man. How about you?
Good. Yeah, thank you for doing it at this hour. I know it's late for you.
Dude, newborn.
True. Still.
Yeah. Is that a gold Pantera Vulgar Display record?
Yes, it is.
How do you manage? We're gonna go off track so quickly.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I was a journalist. You know, prior to my career in the record business, I was a journalist from 1985 or 86
right.
to 1993, and what ended up happening is a lot of the bands sort of I was working with bands that sort of either touched upon my background, which is more on the sort of extreme punk and hardcore side of things, going back to the early 80s, or it's bands that sort of came up in that time that were probably a little tangential to that. And one of the bands I instantly kind of gravitated to and became a fan of was Pantera. When I heard Cowboys from Hell, it was kind of like, cool. It's Black Flag meets Van Halen meets meets Metallica. I'm so in, and it was just a band that I sort of had ended up having like a history with and wrote a lot about. I wrote about them, I probably did the first major story on them for Kerrang,
sure.
for Rip. So consequently, they're like, yeah, we're gonna reward that. We're gonna give that boy a gold record.
Something for his wall.
Yeah, there's a Soundgarden Bad Motorfinger record over there.
That's awesome.
Over there.
Yeah.
I don't have any of my own gold records hanging up in my place. Weirdly enough, it's just because it's boring and I know I did them and whatever. They're in a pile over there.
Yeah. Speaking back to the wider projects at hand, so like I say, I had some sort of trepidation speaking to what I regard as the bigger guys such as yourself, but we're in an advantage because your tenure and what I sort of currently perceive you as responsible for is the very heart of the things that got me into more extreme music. It was that 3-month span, Trivium, September 2005 at the venue that's on the screen behind me. About a week later, Dragonforce at the same venue. Rest in peace, Alexia, Children of Bodom, at the same time. Kill Switch. It's all that stuff is what gravitated me towards more extreme music, and Dragonforce especially is that set me on a path I never came back from, because it moved from Rhapsody, Falconer, that kind of flavor of power metal, sort of a big sort of fantastical concepts, to Dragonforce. Then I'm balls deep into Ailstorm and what ended up being sort of your mainline European folk Viking stuff, and that's kind of the world I lived in for a long time, and that's all Dragonforce's fault, and it's all your fault.
But well, thank you. It's actually, I mean, to back up even before that, it's Herman's fault. It's Rod Smallwood's fault.
Yep.
It's Steve McTaggart's fault. You know, it's Noise Records' fault. Like there was a lot of heavy lifting to get it to me. You know, I mean, I think what Dragonforce did was they took power metal and made it contemporary.
Yeah.
In a way that no band had sort of mastered that, like in that way. I mean, when I first signed them, you couldn't ask for something as uncool at that time as power metal.
Mm.
You know, and I was always I was always a fan of Halloween, Jack Panzer,
Yo.
obviously Maiden, because who isn't? But what I think, Herman and Sam did perhaps better, better than anyone is they took the scope, they took the audacity, they also took the really great songwriting chops
Yep.
that came with that metal, the things that made, Eagles Fly Free off of Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2 just a humongous anthem, and they gave it a whole new spin and gave it a whole new intensity that also had a lot to do with one of the great things about the band, especially at the time that they came to Human Rampage, was the chemistry of the people in the band was bizarre, insane, and untouchable, because all of a sudden you had Lee and Totman, who were both these, just front of the class, holy shit, get out of their way guitar players.
Mm.
You had Dave McIntosh, the drummer, straight out of Balsagoth.
Yep.
Who was bringing that sort of symphonic black metal sensibility to the band.
Yep.
Vadim, who was this, was a gamer, in addition to being like a brilliant keyboard player, was a gamer and had that music, kind of in his mind.
Mm.
So, and you also had Fred Leclerc, who had just taken over from Adrian Lambert.
Yes.
Now Adrian did record on Human Rampage.
Yeah.
But Fred is like as good as Herman and Sam are. Well, Fred's just as great a guitar player, and he also had the legacy of Heavenly behind him.
Mm-hmm.
But whoa, what a talent. Then you've got Zippy Ferret. I'm pronouncing that.
I think it's Zippy or Zippy. It's. I don't think it's agreed
Zippy.
on.
He was just called. I mean, everybody just called him Zippy.
Oh.
But you had Zippy, and and I think Mark Hudson has done a great job, carrying on over the past few records.
Mm.
But Zippy was a special kind of singer as well. So you had this like insane, synergy and of just talents.
It's kind of like they had so much fun with the concept of power metal, and they went so, as you say, expanded the scope of it so much that it could not be enjoyed ironically, and therefore you couldn't therefore say power metal silly anymore. They've done too much to enhance the genre, as you say.
I mean, they made it modern and relevant.
Yeah.
And they also, I mean, who cares about cool? Because the uncool always win.
Yeah.
But they also made it cool. And oh yeah, they were an amazing live band.
Mm.
And oh yeah, they also extended the genre beyond just power metal into this kind of mainstream sensibility. Once Guitar Hero came knocking.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had like people under 10 mastering Through the Fire and the Flames and bringing it to a whole different place. There's Dragonforce having a cultural relevancy and currency that they, by all rights, no way, no how should have had, but
Yeah.
through audacity, a little bit of luck, a really, shows you the power of a really great sync.
Mm.
All of a sudden, hey, mainstream gamer world, here's Dragonforce. And
Yeah.
so it was, and it's funny to think that you also had a record that was completely fringe on the inception,
Yeah.
yet is now a gold record.
I'm gonna actually do a callback to an interview we did with Doc Coyle a few years ago, because in that conversation, Doc said Glassjaw were a band without context, and in a way,
that's my line, by the way.
Was that your line?
That was my line.
I'm sorry, but either way, someone in that room at that time said the Glassjaw was a band without context. I think something similar could be said for Dragonforce, because it was post Slipknot, pre-chip tune. So as you said, it's like there's a video game element to it. It kind of sounds that weird. It's got a lo-fi element to it, but it's not lo-fi at all. And metal was quite a serious thing. As we know, that metalcore was becoming a more mainstream item. And so I think where Dragonforce fit in, there wasn't anything quite like it. No context maybe is the wrong way to describe it, but I think I know what I mean by that.
I think they also helped usher in the age, kind of the return to just a general respect for the guitar player.
Oh, totally.
Which obviously Herman and Sam being complete badasses in their own right, but if you couple that then with the likes of Trivium. And you also start having bands like Protest the Hero sort of lingering around in the ether. You've got this return to an almost, player sensibility, to this real kind of like good, basically they ushered in the return of the guitar hero in heavy metal, hence the video game name as well. But and I think that stamp, remains now.
Yeah, totally. That's what they're known for, the virtuosity, in a way.
So it's not like the Guitar Hero was at all an alien concept to Roadrunner, because we can always bring it back to the Great Cat.
We certainly can.
What is the distance between Beethoven on Speed and Inhuman Rampage?
Especially,
those are. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I was actually going to make a really specific decut about Ultra Beatdown on, I can't remember what's the third track called. Christ, let me try and find it. Reasons to Live, that's it. It drops into like a really cool waltzy bit, and it's the opposite of what Herman usually does. And it's like, just to prove your point, maybe in this analogy, it's Mozart on Speed, but yeah, the distance between Beethoven on Speed and what Herman's doing and Sam is just like, it's not a million miles away, is it?
I hope when you talk to Herman for this, that we can really understand and celebrate the influence of the Great Cat, who, by the way, is a motherfucker of a musician and often doesn't get the credit due. But it's interesting that's part of the legacy. And I also think it's also interesting. Yeah. Going back, if memory serves, probably not in America, but outside America, Case was licensing all the Shrapnel Records stuff.
Correct. Yes.
So it was all in the ether. It was bound to happen.
But yeah, let's crack on with questions, because I put in an hour. I didn't really intend to be a full hour. It'd be as long as as short as it's required to be. So we're here to celebrate Inhuman Rampage, which was the first record which Dragonforce put out on Roadrunner Records. I thought this as a topic would be just like an icebreaker for me and you, so we can sort of learn to navigate each other. Because hopefully, if there is a next time we speak, if I don't piss you off too much, it could hopefully be a lot longer form talking about the label as a whole and having a lot more deep dives into that kind of nuances. But as I say, I don't want to overstay my welcome. So let's.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No worries, man. Let's jump into it. So regarding Dragonforce in particular, so we've given them a little bit of an intro and then trying to understand why they are such a big, lack of a better term, force in metal at that time. So how did you initially come across them? Because I know Sonic Firestorm had been out for a while. They were doing the rounds. So how did they end up on your lap? You said there was some heavy lifting done from the other labels with which they were signed.
Well, I mean, I was, familiar with the Valley of the Damned record.
Yeah.
And I was familiar with Sonic Firestorm. I was never like a humongous power metal guy, but, Halloween, particularly, Walls of Jericho and the Keepers records are awesome. Some of the Jag Panzer stuff I love. Obviously, Iron Maiden is the mothership for all of it. That stuff I love to begin with. Then, and also just like hearing little rumblings about the band and hearing how there was this new English band that was taking power metal in a little bit of a cooler direction. Okay, well, noted. It wasn't until I saw them on the cover of Terrorizer, which I believe was 2004, 2005. I actually wrote it down. Well, anyway, it was basically like Terrorizer power metal special.
Right.
So, as a music fan and as an A&R person, I was like, I better check this damn band out. Like, or I better put them under a little bit more of a magnifying glass. I was able to reach out. I reached out to Herman. I believe it was maybe on MySpace.
It sounds about right, time-wise.
Yeah, I mean, and he referred me to Steve McTaggart, their manager at Sanctuary.
Right.
Steve sent me the Inhuman Rampage record, and it was as well as the Through the Fire and the Flames video, and it was just one of those holy shit moments. Schnoikes, what's going on with this band? Because all of a sudden it was taking guitar heroics, almost like a black metalish kind of velocity and speed. Yeah. Yes, Dave McIntosh, Bal Sagoth.
Yes, no D-Maniac.
Yeah, topping it with these incredible hooks and incredible melodies. And it's no surprise that the band, had the sort of immediate success on that record that they did. So I, without knowing much and going into an A&R meeting, I first and foremost just showed the Through the Fire and the Flames video, and I think literally by the hoisting of the beers in silhouette, then Case was immediately like, hell yes. Now, getting Case to be that sort of excited about something and also ostensibly giving us the green light for something was never an easy feat. But I think that's also that, just a little sidebar. I think that was also part of Roadrunner's success is that he pushed us to find these bands that were sort of genre defining, and in these kind of just watershed bands. And obviously Monty having signed Sepultura, Fear Factory, Typo Negative, Obituary, Deicide,
everyone,
and
Machine
many. Sorry, thank you. We also shan't forget Suffocation and many bands whose records just endure to today. Monty really, his success was having these bands that defined entire genres and subgenres.
Yeah.
So and I think that again, Case really pushed us for that, and pushed us to have these sort of one of a kind, really linchpin bands.
Yeah.
And I think he immediately saw what I was seeing and hearing in Dragonforce, and I think within several weeks, I found myself at the Astoria in London,
right,
seeing them. I want to say it was a sold out show, and holy shit! Not only were they pulling off what they had done, put on record, but they were doing it. They were doing it in style, energy, and grand fashion. There were trampolines involved. People playing guitar. I don't think they missed a note. Maybe they did. I don't know. But people playing guitar, like jumping off trampolines.
Yeah.
And if you look at, like I say, if you look at the chemistry of everyone on stage, be it Sam and Herman, McIntosh, who is a brilliant drummer, Fred Leclerc, even though he wasn't the bass player on the record, just an incredible player, an incredible presence as well. Vadim, who is like guitars. We have guitars, and these almost kind of like video game-ish sounds, and it really like took it into a very different direction. And then you top it with a brilliant, very traditional metal singer, but really a great singer with Zippy. And it's this monster of a band that had me staring at McTaggart going, the new Iron Maiden, like a new direction for not just power metal, but metal in its own right.
Did you know that Dave had an electric kit prior to the Inhuman Rampage run?
I don't know that.
Yeah, when I saw him at the cockpit, first Vadim didn't have a guitar. He was just moshing behind the keyboard as he would do anyway.
Okay.
But Dave had at one of the fold-up ones, and I think the exception was kick, snare, and cymbals. Everything else was pads. And I remember thinking, this is a bit fucking mad. This is a bit mental. But I was front row. I couldn't hear it. Well, I couldn't hear like the fidelity differences between, say, an acoustic kit and what samples they were running. But I thought that was really interesting. And I just wonder if you knew what, if you had any sight of when he transitioned to a full kit. But maybe it was just that gig. I don't know. It's just something that I've never seen since.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to say now it's time to sort of scurry back through YouTube and look at those Sonic Firestorm and Valley of the Damned era shows.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's interesting. I mean, again, it also speaks to their willingness to sort of bend and distort the genre to their own liking.
They might have even thought it could have just been a pragmatic thing, like, well, look, drums take the longest to do on stage. We've got 15-minute changeover because they did a lot of support slots on that run anyway. Dave,
was that on the tour of the Wasp?
No, when I saw them, it was a headlining tour.
Okay.
But there was I imagine the Sonic Firestorm year was like such a busy year anyway. I imagine, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if they're using the same crew, just launch the briefcase out and let it unfold on itself, and we've got the DIs all plugged in. Why not? Maybe.
Oh yeah, it's probably way easier to run.
Yeah.
Obviously sounded great, and also you probably I would imagine they needed to cut through everything that was going on musically. Yeah. There's a lot going on musically.
And I imagine it gives like front of house a lot more control in that respect. So he's the guy at the end of the day who's going to go, right, well, we've got this really tight rhythm section, which is mixed down to a T, but we've got the guitar tones that are taking the lead, which are a little bit more sort of nuanced because it's never the same anytime, especially on the Sonic Firestorm album. It's very kind of MIDI. When I say MIDI, I mean like the mid-range. It's I'm not saying it's not dynamic. I'm just saying I think that's where the video game comparisons come in. It's in that guitar tone, the lead tone that absolutely shreds through a particular section so fast that you can kind of think, yeah, I'm getting real weird Doom vibes from this. And similarly, I think when front of house is listening to that, they're like, right, well, I need to make some room for this. Let's take it out of the snare or something like that. Blah, 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 blah. Maybe that's, and we're just, it's all conjecture, but I just found it really interesting. I found it really interesting. It's interesting that Case was just like, I get it.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, now it's time for an ultra nerdy deep dive.
Cool. Yeah. Now, if there's ever a band to do it with, it's Dragonforce.
It's Dragonforce. Yeah. I mean, and the thing, one of the other great things about them was really Herman did this by sheer will and ingenuity as well. I mean, shred on what, Metal MP3 or something like that. Having the foresight to tackle the internet in a way that very few bands were utilizing it at that point. So, I think that's another aspect of the whole Dragonforce package that's completely forward thinking.
So when do we take the next steps then? So Case has thrown his hands up and gone, this is great. Off you go, Mike. Presumably he's giving you an A&R budget with which you're going to have to go to Sanctuary and Noise and say, can we have a slice of this pie?
Right. I mean,
so they've already got everything, haven't they? With Sonic Firestorm, they had worldwide distribution. They had pretty extensive tour support and tour opportunities. Like they had all the European festival runs. They had the Maiden runs. This is just from memory. I haven't really done any research on this bit.
If memory serves, and what I remember reading in the Damn the Machine History of Noise Records book, that was a point when I think Noise was in business with Sanctuary. And the band was obviously managed by Sanctuary.
Right.
So I think they were looking for the best opportunity for Dragonforce. So, and I think that they realized that having particularly a band that had its hooks so into North America at the time would probably elevate them from just being like, here's another noise power metal band.
Yeah. So what did Roadrunner bring to the table then? Why was Sanctuary happy to yield some space?
I think at that point, there had been. I think at that point probably Noise had gone through many changes as a label.
Right. Okay.
I'm not sure exactly what their distribution situation was at that point, but at that point, Roadrunner had plenty of gold, and actually, with the sort of Close Encounters Mothership arrival of Nickelback, plenty of platinum records as well.
Yeah.
So it offered opportunities, and it offered a different group of bands. It basically offered a roster of bands that were either genre defining and fresh and new, like Killswitch, bands that had gold, that had gold success behind them. Typo, Fear Factory, obviously Machine had done incredibly well. Sepultura. So there was a legacy of success, and I think that they looked at Roadrunner as probably just a better partner, particularly in North America,
right?
To have the band with.
It's interesting how far reputation in that regard goes. Yeah, especially when when you comparing with Sanctuary, who is obviously the home of Rod Smallwood. Yeah, and it's especially, like I say, maybe it is that North American context which really sort of sealed the deal for them.
I think so. I mean, Sanctuary Sanctuary as a label. I mean, it's obviously what Rod Smallwood, had historically done with Maiden and a management company is incredible and irreproachable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Sanctuary as a label, I think, like made a strong go of it,
Mm-hmm.
and was definitely put out some great records. Love the first Halford record. Love the Corrosion Conformity records they put out.
Yep.
God, what else did they put out? Anyway, and it was also, you know, and the interesting thing there was it was also run by Corey Brennan
Mm-hmm.
in the States, who now is the head of 5B Management.
Yeah.
Another Roadrunner alum.
Oh,
God, it was such a yeah. Corey was a product manager at Roadrunner. So yeah, another titan of the industry from that cradle of success called Roadrunner Records.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. That was one of the interviews I'm editing and throwing up as soon as I can is Miles Leonard, who was responsible for Coldplay, The Verve, Kylie Minogue. He did 2 years at Roadrunner from 94 to 96 in the UK. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. And Andy Saunders, he was working at Creation Records when Oasis smashed, broke out with the Britpop stuff. Yeah, Roadrunner is a weird place. If it's like Platoon. If you're an actor in Platoon and you're not world famous now, you're screwed up. Similarly, if you worked at Roadrunner Records in any capacity and you're not now raking it in some capacity, something went.
Let's say gainfully employed.
Yeah. What was my next question? So Case didn't take any convincing. Obviously, the band knows where Roadrunner stands. My next one was going to be about you were signing him kind of blind because you didn't know about Inhuman Rampage, but you did say that you got that sent, presumably a promo copy or the completed product was sent to you by the manager, so you knew what you were getting into.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that was the record we were going. You know, if we were going to get into business with Dragonforce, that was the record we were going to put out.
Yeah,
which makes it really easy and really cool for an A&R guy to go, hey, I'm delivering this badass record, and I don't have to like put an ounce of sweat equity into it. It was all these guys.
It was already done. Yeah. Yeah, man, that's awesome. So, how was your relationship with the band from an A&R perspective? Is it just were they just like, oh, hi Mike, we're just going to get on with doing our thing, or was there a real kind of like collaboration in terms of direction and strategy, for lack of a better phrase?
I mean, from a creative point of view, and I worked on obviously I was there for Inhuman Rampage, and I was pretty much more of an involved A&R person on the Ultra Beatdown record, the subsequent Ultra Beatdown record. But I think by that point, those guys, there's bands that require a lot of hands-on effort. I think some of the true greats are bands that you just have to get out of the way and celebrate, the great music that they're bringing you.
Yeah.
And I've been very lucky to, I've worked with bands, on both sides of that spectrum. And I've been very lucky to be party to a lot of artists who, there's nothing I could tell Michael Ackerfeld from Opeth. No. Earlier in my career, what am I going to say to Brett Gurwitz and Greg Graffin from Bad Religion? Not a hell of a lot, because these are all bands that are fully formed, and they deliver brilliance time and time again. Well, with Inhuman Rampage, which was really kind of a high point and a redefinition of, what they had been building up to, they pretty much had Dragonforce covered. And I just got to look smart and cool. I think when it came time for Ultra Beatdown, the natural inclination was to try to replicate the success of it.
On Ultra Beatdown, then. So, actually, let's go into the touring cycle for Inhuman Rampage, because they were I'm going to say run ragged. I don't think the word ragged is the right term, because they're ready to walk across the earth multiple times over. and they did so with things like the Black Crusade with all the other Roadrunner acts. I think it was Trivium, Machine Head. There's a couple. Shadows Fall were on that tour as well. They were busy boys, but with that came, as you say, that they became kind of a household name. I remember when I was at college at the time. I was in college, being sixth form college, being how does that translate to American? I was 16, whatever. I even had people in my school go, "Oh, have you heard this band?" Because they knew I was a metalhead, and it was Through the Fire and Flames. And this is like a year after the album had come out, and it's interesting how like its beats in terms of becoming prevalent and having a seat at the table with mainstream music. It wasn't to the normal album cycle rhythm. The album came out 15 years ago last week, I think it was, and then the first single was August. So Through the Fire and Flames came out, I think, in its fullest capacity in August, and then there was only two more singles, I believe. I think it was Revolution, Death Squad, and Operation Ground and Pound throughout 2007. That's incredibly elongated, and I find that really interesting. Was that obviously? I doubt that was by design in any way.
I ended up seeing a lot of Dragonforce shows, 2006, 2007, and literally, we put out Through the Fire and the Flames, and it wasn't just like, yeah, this is the coolest band in town. It was explosive. Dragonforce came in, to North America for basically a quick like, hello, how are you kind of tour, just kind of dipping their toe in the water, and what the response was unbelievable. I saw the New York show at the Avalon, the New England Metal and Hardcore Festival appearance, and then I saw the show at the Whiskey, which was just one of those landmark shows. And it was great. There was this great backstage moment where Dave Mustaine came by to say hello. It almost felt like one of those like handshake, passing up, handshake sort of mark of approval, sort of like, yeah, you're cool, you're in the club moments. And it was, that was a great small run that, they followed that with, I believe, the inaugural Mayhem Fest, getting main stage on that, followed, probably the next year by a run on Ozfest. So really, like, it was explosive from the start, and there was definitely a feeling that Dragonforce had arrived.
I think I wanted to go into that asking were they keen to get back into the studio for Ultra Beatdown, but it's kind of, then I started thinking like the wheels were turning. I was like, no, because the actual like peaks of the success of the album came at so many different times, and I
think what had happened is, they earned Dragonforce fans from the outset. I think where the whole thing shifted was, with the arrival of Guitar Hero, which also just shows you like the power of a great sync. You then got Guitar Hero fans, and there were a lot of them, and at that point, Dragonforce took on this mainstream currency that I think they were on the Ellen show with someone playing the game who was under 10 years old and beating the game, and probably, I think I remember Herman saying, yeah, they're playing that game better than I can play that.
Yeah, I think like especially with Guitar Hero 3, it was very much a party game. So it's not a gamer crowd that's getting into Dragonforce. It's like the same guys that played Pong when Pong came out and was looking at the screen. It's far more expansive than that. But I think you're right when you say in that cycle they found their fans, and that's the important thing. Like the Darkness, I think, are a great sort of example of that thing happening as well. So the Darkness had permission to land, and they had one hit ticket to hell and back, and then they all split off and do their own thing for 5 years, and now they've come back and they know what they're playing to now. And it kind of, that's where their shift happened. And it's interesting because I think it changes the incentive structure by which you then conduct yourself. I mean, Monty says this thing where I could be misquoting him, and I don't mean to, but when a band is incepted, you got, as soon as it's conceived, you got 5 years of shitting gold. And after that time, it kind of somewhat diminishes, or it somewhat takes a different form. Machine Era are an exception. They had that first run, then they had the Blackening run and the Ashes run. Exception. Or you had bands that become a brand around their own thing. And then bad example, maybe Slayer. You have Slayer, who have like a great run in the 80s. Then there's not a lull in the 90s, but they've kind of encapsulated this one kind of brand thing, and that's their entire shtick, and they found their fans, and that's what they ride on. Dragonforce is a similar kind of thing. I don't think anything from Ultra Beatdown onwards became as ubiquitous as Inhuman Rampage, but they haven't lost any potency, or there hasn't been a moment where it's like, oh, they were playing an arena, now they're playing a club. That's just not happened at all.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, I think you can, it's usually like you have your entire life to write your first record. So all this sort of naive, energy and great ideas and bad ideas, always go into that first record.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably by virtue of what you're saying, Dragonforce joined that elite club of Master of Puppets, Rain and Blood. It's that moment where a band finds its feet and connects with its chemistry and its greatness. Yeah. So I think that's really what Inhuman Rampage, was. And I mean, Ultra, the one thing that I think you can say about the band now is, they're still making really great records. They're still playing great shows to a lot of people, but those fans are legitimate Dragonforce fans.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're not, the huge amount of tangential Guitar Hero fans.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it speaks to, I think it speaks to the band, and particularly, Herman and Sam's, hard work they've put in all these years, where, they've made themselves an iconic band that still means a lot.
I mean, the Twitch thing that's happened this summer, man. Herman's now like he's an internet celebrity for what he's, for giving us an insight into his workflow at home, which I think is maybe what people were wondering, how he churned out, such great music, before this was even possible. Now we get to see it, and I think it's interesting how it still resonates with people in a very poignant way.
Well, just, like I've said before, I mean, the guy is forward-thinking, brilliant, and just, he will always have, an important career.
Yeah.
Because he understands the landscape, he understands his audience, and he understands how to get to his audience in a way that, a lot of bands don't.
Yeah. It's so cool. I mean, this whole Roadrunner project is about me trying to reverse engineer what the value is and how people commercialize and how we can propagate metal and make it happen more and more and more. And the things we have to compete with are market forces and what people consider to be valuable and ubiquitous and things like that. So it's really cool when you see someone like Herman understanding that landscape and going to town on it.
I mean, that's another great Roadrunner thing, is like you can look at some of the personalities that passed through those hallowed halls, and it's guys like Herman, it's guys like Dino, it's guys like Flynn,
Hafey,
it's Max, it's Andreas, like it's Glenn Benton,
it's Adam D.
It's Adam, of course it's Adam D. I mean, he made short shorts cool. Capes.
Yeah, he made the Jägermeister capes back.
Yeah, I mean the cape, come now. But yeah, these are Peter Steele. These are part of the legacy, and I think part of the brilliance of what Case was able to push us A&R guys to really deliver. And we made a bunch of good choices.
Yeah, man. It's crazy.
All right.
Yeah. No, dude, I'm gonna let you know. Do it, man. Right. Thanks very much. I'll let you know.
Just send me the edit.
Rock and roll.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and thank you for doing it this way.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Thanks.